Hey, I'm Olivia,
And hey, I'm Dad.
and you're listening to Soarin' Around WDW. Welcome back, flight crew. These past few weeks have been super busy leading up to our Disneyland trip, which, if you are listening to this on the day that it releases, we will be leaving tomorrow. I'm so looking forward to getting back to the magic and can't wait to share more with you all in a few weeks when we get back. But before we begin, I wanted to wish Dad an early happy birthday. So happy birthday, Dad.
Well, thank you. Yeah, another trip around the sun, so
Yeah,
it's it's
always.
all good.
Yes. So his birthday falls on Valentine's Day, and so we're right in the midst of birthday celebrations. I thought the timing of this series was perfect as we are talking about something that you love and know a ton about, Dad. So today we are here with another Treasured Attractions episode, this time going with Dad's favorite attraction, the Haunted Mansion. This is one of the greatest Disney attractions of all time, and the illusions and ambiance have more than held up over the years. We are excited to get into the history, opening day and crowd reception, some hidden things throughout the attractions, variations across the parks, and our own personal stories with the attraction as well. So buckle up and get ready for takeoff. I have to say, you really could do a lengthy series on this attraction, but we are going to keep it to just a few episodes. If you want a super in-depth history, check out our friends Make It Magical and their 12, yes, 12 part series that they did on the Haunted Mansion. They really focused on Disneyland, all the different tricks and behind the scenes things over there, and we will mostly be focusing on the history and secrets of the Disney World version of this attraction. But of course, a lot of the history involved in the original ride was obviously the Disneyland attraction. So, Dad, are you ready to start us off with some history of this beloved attraction?
I'm good and ready.
Okay, let's do it.
I guess we're going to start with the origins and development of the Haunted Mansion. Of course, the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland is sometimes referred to as the last Disneyland attraction in which Walt himself had a hand in the design. While he certainly saw some of the development of the Country Bear Jamboree and other later attractions, no other Imagineering endeavor was anticipated for so long as the mansion. First built in 1962-63, the mansion definitely saw the longest period of development of any Disneyland attraction. In fact, its first conception dated back to 1951, marking nearly 2 decades from pencil sketch to opening date of August 9th, 1969. During that time, many of Disney's most famous artists had participated in the development. The first was Harper Goff, that famed designer of the distinctive submarine Nautilus in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. In 1951, Goff first sketched a haunted house for Disneyland Park, situated high on a hill behind the church on Main Street, USA. Ken Anderson, sometimes known as the 10th Old Man, is believed to be responsible for a 1957 elevation drawing of a haunted house to be situated to the west of Adventureland. Later, Ken was the first to sketch the interior of the mansion, much as it was built, but somewhere more dilapidated in appearance. While Walt Disney insisted nothing should look shabby in Disneyland, it seemed there was a fraction of Imagineers who believed you couldn't build a haunted house that wasn't run down. Anderson tried to sneak the dilapidated mansion by Walt's sensibilities by surrounding the building behind thick trees, so it could be seen from Disneyland proper, only discovered by guests as they wound their way up to the path onto the mansion's grounds. And just from my opinion, that sounds like a pretty cool way to do it. I kind of wish they would have did it that way.
Yeah, I guess it would take a lot more space if you think about it, like having to have it kind of hidden back behind trees, but that would be a really cool way to do it.
Anderson also drew up a detailed script and map for a fully realized walkthrough version of the attraction, complete with a lonesome ghost host and a bride and ghoul wedding scene as a climax to the action. Guests exited the mansion by walking out the family tomb and up through open graves into the cemetery behind the house.
Artist Sam McKim contributed to the mansion's development by adapting Anderson's sketch of the dilapidated mansion into a full-color painting. Despite its rundown appearance, this is probably the best-known exterior view of the mansion there is. Imagineer Rolly Crump worked on Haunted Mansion's effects from the earliest experiments with the Pepper's Ghost effect done in the animation building on the studio lot in the 1950s through to WED Enterprises, now called Walt Disney Imagineering's establishment in their own offices in Glendale, California. Crump really caught Walt's attention, though, with his bizarre designs for objects inside the Haunted Mansion. Walt couldn't see them fitting within the show story, but he liked them so much that he proposed having the attraction empty guests into a museum of the weird, which would feature Crump's designs as oddities collected from around the globe. Sadly, with Walt's passing, the idea of that museum did not last, and today, Crump's influence on the mansion can best be seen in some of the chairs that have the distinct appearance of human-like faces in their stitched seams. I've heard of this Museum of the Weird before, but I don't know that that would have stuck around. What do you think about that, Dad?
Yeah, I think that would have been kind of short-lived.
Yeah, yeah, it's like you walk around it, there's weird stuff. I don't know, but it's an interesting idea.
Imagineering's focus on the attractions for the 1964-65 New York World's Fair put a halt to development of the mansion. After the fair, Mark Davis picked up the torch of trying to develop a haunted mansion attraction that would both move guests through in a timely manner and follow a cohesive story. His script is somewhat sketchier than Anderson's early script was, concerned more with giving general impressions that literally mapping out each moment of the attraction scenes and dialogue. Mark's script is also the first to start with the elevator room that, by then, was determined to be needed to deliver guests underneath the berm and train tracks at Disneyland and into a soundstage like show building beyond. He doesn't start his story there, but in the first room, a portrait gallery of the former residents of the mansion. Further scenes include a fully alive seance medium, a forerunner of Madame Leota, and a room full of retired ghosts who take turns showing off their best scaring abilities. While Davis designed most of the humorous scenes associated with the second half of the mansion, Imagineer Claude Coates is attributed with designing the evocatively empty, but nevertheless creepy corridors, rooms, and hallways in the first half of the ride. A reoccurring problem with all the walk-through versions of the mansion show was the problem of traffic flow. Simply put, the mansion had to be able to move a large number of people through every hour, difficult to attain with small groups moving from room to room, and perhaps small children becoming scared and refusing to move on in a timely manner. This was settled with the Omnimover ride system created by Roger Brogy and Bert Brundage. It created a constantly moving stream of vehicles, famously dubbed doom buggies, that could be individually turned to focus on scenes as fit the show and ensure the guests keep moving at an even pace. Now, the whole doom buggies thing I found very interesting because in the 60s, when this was designed, it's a spinoff of the word dune buggy, which were very popular in the 1960s. They're basically were VW bug chassis and engines and interiors, and they would just take the body off and put a fiberglass body over the top of it, and they'd run them all over the dunes all over California. So that's where they kind of get a spinoff of doom buggies. Where a lot of people are like, what do you mean by doom buggy? And that's kind of where they got that from back in the day.
So it's kind of like a four-wheeler, but for sand almost, or like, is that like a bigger?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting. So the Omnimover was truly an inventive piece of work because before the Omnimover, you really had more attractions, kind of like Winnie the Pooh or Snow White, where you board, ride, and unload with all of the cars starting and stopping. It definitely slows down the load and unload process and also allows for less riders per hour. The first major step towards what we now call Omnimover technology actually goes back to something Dad mentioned above, the that Dad mentioned before, the 1964 to 1965 World's Fair. Disney partnered with several companies to create attractions for the fair, including It's a Small World and Carousel of Progress, of course. This was a huge experimental period for Imagineers. If you haven't listened to our World's Fair episodes, go back and listen to those. Those were a couple of months ago. They were pushing boundaries, developing more lifelike animatronics like Mr. Lincoln, and testing new ride systems that could better engage guests. One of the key figures here was Disney Imagineer Bob Gurr, who worked on the Ford's Magic Skyway, another Disney attraction at the fair. While it might not sound groundbreaking at first, the ride quality laid the foundation for future systems like the People Mover and eventually the Omnimover. Ford's Magic Skyway introduced a brand new idea, the continuously moving ride. Guests rode in actual Ford cars that were attached to a constantly moving conveyor belt. The ride never stopped. Instead of waiting for a vehicle to load, guests just stepped in it as it passed by. That was a game changer. Continuous loading meant faster lines and much higher capacity, which was incredibly valuable at a packed World's Fair. Now, that idea alone didn't give us the Omnimover just yet. In fact, that conveyor based system became the backbone of the People Mover, something that Walt even imagined as a real transportation system for his original Epcot vision. But the People Mover was still missing one crucial ingredient that would define the next evolution of dark rides: rotating vehicles. That's where the Omnimover comes in. Instead of individual cars sitting on a conveyor belt, an Omnimover uses a continuous chain of vehicles, all linked together into one long train. They look like separate cars from the outside because the connections are hidden beneath the floor, but mechanically they're all part of the same system. And at a specific points in the ride, the track itself causes the vehicles to rotate, almost like clockwork. This is what separates the Omnimover from rides like Ford's Magic Skyway or the People Mover. Those rides moved continuously, but the vehicles always faced forward. With an Omnimover, the ride actually decides exactly where you look.
A perfect example of this is the Haunted Mansion. The Doom buggies may look like individual cars, but they're all connected to one continuous conveyor system. That connection allows them to rotate smoothly and in sync at just the right moments. According to legend, Bob Gurr first came up with the concept while brainstorming with fellow Disney legend John Hench. Supposedly, Gurr started spinning a candied apple on a stick, and that simple motion sparked the idea. From there, the concept evolved into a system guided by multiple hidden rails, one to keep the vehicle on track, another to control the tilt, and the third to manage rotation. It's a surprisingly flexible and reliable system capable of all kinds of subtle movement. And while the technology itself is fairly simple, what allows creatively is huge. Change dark rides forever. Subtly, Imagineers could treat attractions like movies, controlling exactly what guests see, and when they see it, there's no guessing whether riders will notice an important scene. The ride physically points them toward it. The first Disney attraction to fully use true Omnimover technology was Adventure Through Inner Space, which has since closed. We'll get into that one more when we dive deeper into Disneyland history later on. And when it comes to the Haunted Mansion, the Omnimover completely reshaped how the ride was designed. Right from the start, the Doom buggies set the tone. There's no cast member pulling down your safety bar. The ride does it itself. The loading area's rail automatically raises and lowers the restraint as guests board and exit. The invisible, almost phantom force reinforces the idea that the mansion itself is alive and in control. As the ride continues, many of the ghosts don't even activate until the Doom buggies are in the perfect viewing position. The timing, the rotation, the pacing, it's all carefully orchestrated by the Omnimover system. Without it, the Haunted Mansion simply wouldn't be that iconic, immersive experience we know today. The other attractions that currently use the Omnimover system at Walt Disney World are The Little Mermaid, Journey into Imagination with Figment, Spaceship Earth, Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, and the People Mover as a variation on the system.
It would be short sighted to list the great contributors to the mansion's development without giving a nod to Imagineer Leota Toombs. Toombs lent both her name and face to Madame Leota, conducting her ghostly seance from inside her crystal ball. And little Leota, the tiny figure that calls guests to hurry back as they depart the mansion. Little Leota was also voiced by Toombs, while the medium's voice was Eleanor Audley, the voice of Lady Tremaine in Cinderella and Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty.
Imagineer ex Intencio contributed one of the last scripts for the mansion, dated roughly a year before the attraction opened in 1969. All the elements of the show as it premiered were in his script, with a slight addition of one final attempt to thread a continuous storyline through the ride. The ghost host draws our attention to a raven wearing a distinctive necklace several times throughout the mansion, only to reveal at the end that he himself is the raven and intends to possess one of the guests as they leave. Intensio's script also ends with a rough version of his iconic grim grinning ghost, this distinctive song that become synonymous with the attraction itself. The music for Grim Grinning Ghosts, also known as the Screaming Song, was written by the famous Buddy Baker. The attraction remains a hybrid of many influences, part funny, part scary, part a walkthrough, and part a ride. It is no one thing that any of its many contributors set out for it to be. One thing the mansion clearly is, however, is one of the most popular and enduring attractions of the Disney parks, and a living legacy of Walt's ability to not only recognize creative geniuses, but to get them together to create something greater than the sum of its parts.
So, Dad, speaking of so many cooks in the kitchen, if Haunted Mansion had been designed entirely by just one Imagineer, do you think it would be better or less memorable if it wasn't multiple people that were kind of leading the ship? Because it kind of created some conflict where they weren't really agreeing on how it should be, but also then it became such an iconic attraction.
Yeah, I think if it would have been one person, you would have had some walk through wax museum, and it probably wouldn't have lasted very long. Or it would have been having all the different elements of walking in and then loading into the doom buggies, and then having all the different scenes where it's definitely scary in the beginning, and then you get to the graveyard scene, and then it gets fun, kind of fun, and it's like a big party, in the graveyard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think having a group of Imagineers with a lot of different ideas, and that's true of a lot of attractions, I think really wins in the end. So yeah, they definitely nailed it with this attraction, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just made it that kind of nod between funny and scary and gave it a little bit of, kids can enjoy it because there are funny parts, but then it is a little spooky still. It was a good mix. I definitely agree.
The Haunted Mansion officially opened at Disneyland on August 9th, 1969, after years of development and delays, including Walt Disney's involvement in the 1964-65 World's Fair. The attraction quickly became a favorite among guests, featuring a ride-through experience in the dune buggies that allowed for immersive storytelling and special effects.
When the Magic Kingdom itself opened on October 1st, 1971, so did its version of the Haunted Mansion. Though inspired by the original Disneyland design, Walt Disney World's mansion boasts several unique elements. For starters, it's housed in a Dutch Gothic revival style manner rather than the New Orleans plantation style that you see over at Disneyland in California. This architectural shift helped it blend seamlessly into the colonial aesthetic of Liberty Square. Inside, the ride layout is also larger and slightly longer than its West Coast counterpart, giving Imagineers more room to play with illusions, gags, and elaborate the story. From the moment that guests enter the mansion, they're greeted with a perfect blend of humor and horror, like we talked about. The ghost host, voiced by the unforgettable Paul Frees, guides visitors through the attraction's most memorable scenes: the eerie stretching room, the endless hallway, Madame Leota's seance, and the iconic ballroom ghost party are all brought to life with a centuries old illusion called Pepper's Ghost.
The finale in the graveyard is a campy, chaotic celebration of the afterlife, complete with singing bus, ghoulish revelers, and the mischievous hitchhiking ghosts who just might follow you home. Over the years, the Haunted Mansion has seen a few updates and enhancements. In 2007, the Magic Kingdom version underwent a significant refurbishment. This included new lighting effects, improved audio, and added scenes like the floating Madame Leota and an updated attic featuring the ghostly bride, Constance Hatchaway, with a sinister backstory involving her dearly departed husbands. In 2011, the queue was reimagined to include interactive elements such as musical crypts, a ghostly book puzzle, and clever nods to characters and Imagineers from Haunted Mansion's lore. That same year, the hitchhiking ghosts in the finale were updated with new digital effects, allowing them to interact with guests in spooky new ways.
I remember when these things change. I remember definitely as a kid when it went from Madame Leota being on the table to floating. That was a huge, and then the queue was another really big change. I think that's kind of when interactive queues or queues with more things to do were becoming more popular. Like after Winnie the Pooh came out with its interactive queue, the Peter Pan queue changed, Dumbo changed. So I'm sure kind of recall the change in both of these, right, Dad?
Yes, and I do remember some other changes too that are just I'm kind of remembering inside the stairway. You used to kind of just go up the stairway you're in your doom buggy, of course, but then they changed it where the you see they actually see the like shoe prints of the
Oh yeah.
person walking. That
Mm-hmm.
was an additional thing they added. And of course, they upgraded the whole hitchhiking ghost at the end. And the hitchhiking ghost that you see, and then when you turn and go look in the mirrors and the ghosts are there, that's uh, that whole sequence is definitely enhanced also from the original way they did it. I loved it both ways. It didn't really have a big effect on me, the change, but I thought both of them were actually equally as good. So, even without the change, I thought it was great the way they had it. But yeah, those are some other ones that I remember.
Yeah, I remember seeing kind of how they used to do the old hitchhiking ghosts basically effect, and it was kind of behind the mirrors. They had like them on a track, and they would kind of go at the same speed as the doom buggies, and so you'd get whichever ghost or whatever would do its little thing and move with you in the mirror and then kind of go back around the other side, and they had the different ones. I don't mind the way it is now either. I definitely think the other way was super classic. I did hear from other people that they recently added more ghosts or like different effects in the last few months. So there's like new things that can happen with the more like projected ghosts that they have now. So like people's ride pictures, people were noticing like, hey, I haven't seen that ghost before, or that's a new ghost. So that also recently got updated. But before we continue on, I have to talk about one big addition that was the most recent, I believe, other than this new ghost thing at the end, but it was also highly criticized, and that is the Hatbox Ghost. Now, over at Disneyland, the Hatbox Ghost is a fan favorite, and so many people for years kept asking, well, where's the Hatbox Ghost at Disney World? Why don't we have a Hatbox Ghost? And people got what they asked for, sort of, because the Hatbox Ghost was added on November 30th, 2023, so just over 2 years ago. But it was put in a peculiar place. It's at the front of the never-ending hallway where what we used to call the Donald Duck chair used to sit. I don't know if other people ever called it that. Is that a thing? Did we make that up? Or I feel like it looked like Donald Duck. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure.
Yes, it was a chair that kind of rocked by itself.
Yeah.
And he looked at it like, yeah, it kind of looks like Donald Duck's face. We said that right along. I'm sure other people probably noticed that. Maybe that's what it's called. Maybe that's intentional. I never
Probably.
actually really looked into that, if that was an intentional thing. I have a funny feeling it might have been
I'm
intentional.
I'm looking right now just to see. Oh, it does. Somebody posted when it changed RIP to this particular face armchair, aka Donald Duck chair. So okay, it
Yeah.
looks like other
Okay.
people did other people did this. And it says the design for that chair was part of the original artwork by Rolly Crump for the Haunted Mansion that was approved for Walt,
Right.
or by Walt. So yeah, super interesting. But for those who are not familiar with the history of this legendary ghost, the Hatbox Ghost was a short-lived 1969 Disneyland Haunted Mansion resident known for his head disappearing from his shoulders into a hat box. But the original effect failed due to lighting, so he vanished for decades, gaining cult status before returning back in 2015 with updated tech connecting him to serial killer Constance Hatchaway, a popular fan theory suggesting he was her victim or rival, though the backstory remains playfully mysterious. So, while the drama about his location at Walt Disney World, well, the big kerfuffle about the location at Walt Disney World is at the point in the ride, Leota has not called the spirits, and so up until that point, there have not really been any ghosts that have materialized or that you have seen. They've not been visible. So why is he there? Well, most people in the Reddit thread about this that I was reading think that it was Imagineers' lack of attention to detail, but we all know that Imagineers don't really have a lack of attention to detail. Their entire jobs are detail oriented, storyline oriented. So I think it must have just been a space issue. What do you think, Dad, about this? Was it just like something they didn't really think about? Was it space? Because he's a pretty large animatronic.
Yeah. I mean, the Disney Imagineers, for the most part, are pretty good at, you know, story and figuring things out, but they definitely have a little bit of a point there. I don't know where I'm trying to think through the ride. I don't know where else they would put this. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, they can't really put it in the attic. They already have the whole Constance Hatchaway thing going on. It wouldn't make any sense up there. Yeah, and then last scene is so crazy. There's so much going on. It kind of gets lost. And where they put it, I guess, makes sense to me. I mean, the chair was a chair and it's rocking, not that big a deal. But to put it there where there's not a whole lot else going on other than the endless hallway, which is when I was a kid, I also thought that was super cool. Like, wow, that hallway goes forever. Of course, it's just a mirror effect, a bunch of mirrors angled to make that effect. But yeah, I guess I'm fine with where they have it.
I think it's okay. I feel like I wish where they could have put it was like right before you go backwards. I'm sure there's just not space, but like when you come out of the attic, like right there on that corner when you turn around, if he could be like right there, that would be really cool. But I don't think there's, yeah, a lot of space right there. Or I don't know, maybe like somewhere right before the attic in the transitional space between the ballroom scene and the attic. But in the Disneyland version, he is in the attic, kind of just like I said, right after the grand ballroom scene, before the graveyard, because theirs is like a little bit different order than ours. So it's a little bit, well, I guess that's pretty similar. And he is like as you come around the corner before you see Constance. So it is, yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. I'm sure the space was a big piece of that, but it was funny. There was all this uproar about it, and a lot of people talk about it that it's just such a silly place to put him for the story when you're thinking about like the storyline of the Haunted Mansion. That's where I would put it, I think, if I could decide. Is there like a specific place that you think he would fit better than the hallway?
Personally, no. I just think there's so much going on after that point. I'm comfortable with where they have it. I thought the effect was pretty cool. I did see that a couple years ago when they first put it in, and I thought it was
Was
done well.
Was the original Hatbox Ghost there when you went to the Disneyland version? Do you remember? What year did you go again? No, it was before you went, right?
I went in 1970, so it was only open for about 10 months before we
Okay.
went. It could have been there. I don't know when they put it in. I don't remember it. Again, I was 10 years old, so certain things I really remember and certain things I don't. I don't remember the Hatbox Ghost, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
It looks like what I'm seeing is that it was removed like still in 1969, not long after it opened. So because of the technical glitch, they took him out pretty quick. So it's funny what people hold on to and what like people remember. If it was only there that very short amount of time and all these people were like, bring it back, and they found a way to bring him back. But it's super interesting that they did that. I'll have to look up kind of some original pictures of the original Hatbox Ghost, or if they have, I don't know. It's hard because back then there weren't obviously the same kind of pictures as there were today, but that is super interesting. I'll pop some into the YouTube video here for those that watch on YouTube for our channel. So let's kind of move into our favorite scenes and exterior elements. So, Dad, why don't you go first?
Before I jump into that, something just came back to me, and I think it was in the Disneyland version that I read about that they actually had a an actor in a suit of armor right
Oh,
by the endless hallway where the Hatbox Ghost used to be, and he would like scare people. It was like the only person, a real live person, that was actually acting, but it didn't last very long either because I think people were like, I think I read they were like spitting at him and stuff.
oh my
And
gosh.
and he was like scaring someone. I don't know if I don't think he ever had. I don't think he ever touched anybody or hit anybody, of course. But something happened where they got rid of it. It just didn't work. They thought it'd be kind of fun to do something like that. I don't
Yeah,
think I'm mistaken.
no, you're right. I just looked it up while you were talking. So they briefly had a live actor in a suit of armor known as the Night of the Living Dead during the 1980s in the endless
The
hallway, just like
80s.
you said,
Okay.
in the
Okay.
80s to add scares, but the feature was removed due to guest complaints and safety issues, though the static suit of armor, so it's just kind of standing there, remains
Yeah.
as an Easter egg and was
Okay.
featured in the movie. Obviously, in the Haunted Mansion movie, they have that whole like row of,
Yes.
suits of
Right.
armor. But yes, so it was temporary, and Disney kind of wanted to make the ride scarier because it was becoming too predictable, people were saying. But then they did this, and guests were like, no, this is too scary. But it's funny, this picture, I'll put this in as well. Let me save this. This picture on Reddit is like, he got really close to them. Let me see. I'm going to try to share my screen.
Yeah, I remember reading that. I thought it was earlier, but yeah, I thought they had somebody alive act. Yeah, okay. I've seen that picture before. Yeah.
That is crazy. He's
Yeah.
really close to them.
Yeah. And I think it was right where the endless hallway was, kind of where
That's
the
what it
Hatbox
said.
Ghost. Yeah, that would make
Yeah.
sense.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
great.
that is so funny. And I guess there's a little bit about it. Do you have this book, The Unauthorized History of Walt Disney's Haunted Mansion? I feel like you maybe do. That sounds
I,
familiar.
I do not. I
Okay.
don't. Most of my research over the years has been online. So
Okay. Okay. Super interesting. Good memory. That is a good one. So let's spend a few minutes talking about our favorite scenes and exterior elements. So, Dad, why don't you go first?
I have a few favorite scenes, which probably won't surprise anyone. My first is the ballroom scene with all the ghosts. Of course,
Hmm.
Disney is using the Pepper's ghost illusion here, as you are seeing the ghosts reflected on a large plate of glass that is right in front of your doom buggy, making them appear in the ballroom itself. All the animatronic ghosts are either above you on a deck or below you, what I'll call the basement. You can't see, obviously, when you look up, there's a ceiling. You look down, of course, there's the floor. These animatronics are happening well above you, well below you, and they're lighted, and they're actually dressed in white, just like you see them. They're dressed all in white to make them look ghostly, and then they're illuminated with a bright light, and then just reflect. It's just reflection. That's all it is, and they're located in certain places, so they match up with like the table, the cake, the birthday cake that the I believe the is it the queen or something? Somebody's blowing out a birthday cake right at the end of the
Uh-huh.
table, and you got the people, the two guys dueling up on the pictures up there, and would be up above you, as far as where the animatronics are, and everything down on the floor level is below you. The banquet scene and all the different things that are happening at the bottom. So I just love that scene. I always sit up more in my doom buggy and kind of look over the rail there and try to just see something that I maybe haven't seen before. And we've been on the ride so many times. I'm sure we've caught everything by now, but I still really love that scene. My favorite part of that scene has always been the skeletal organ player to the far left with all the skulls flowing out of the organ pipes.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
I always thought that scene, that's another postcard that I got when I was a kid, when I was there at Disneyland. I just thought it was so cool. He's actually playing a copy of the organ from the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie from 1954. Disneyland's Haunted Mansion has the real organ prop from 1954.
Oh, I don't think I knew that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the movie, I think I've seen it once, many moons ago. Captain Nemo's playing that organ in the submarine. I think it's a big sub, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's actually the prop that's at Disneyland. Again, the Walt Disney version is a copy of that same prop.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's super cool.
Another favorite scene is the graveyard. Of course, a lot of people probably say that's my favorite scene. I completely understand that. I love all the ghosts having a swinging wake, right from the scared gravedigger and his dog, right? They're shaking as they're going through.
Yeah.
That's where the fun starts, right? You're coming down, you're falling out of the attic, basically, and your doom buggy turns around. It's like you're falling out of the attic into the graveyard. And the bus are singing Grim Grinning Ghosts. The Imagineers really nailed this. My all-time fave vignette out of all the things that are happening in there is the three ghosts on the left-hand side playing musical instruments. I think one's playing a long trumpet, and I should have looked at the picture before we recorded it because I actually purchased a postcard of these guys at Disneyland in 1970. I had the postcard for the longest time, and I'll have to dig through my stuff. I'm sure I still have it somewhere. But
Yeah, that'd be cool.
way back, I know people are like, postcard, what's a postcard, right?
Yeah.
Um, Everybody sends emails now, right? You just click things and you send things. But back then, man, it was postcards. You'd send a postcard to your friends. Hey, I'm at Disneyland. I wish you were here, kind of thing. So it
Yeah.
was postcards were very popular for, many, many, many decades. As far as the outside of the Haunted Mansion, I've always enjoyed the cemetery right before you enter the main doorway. All the tombstones are nods to Imagineers that worked on the Haunted Mansion. And Leota Tomb's headstone that opens her eyes and looks around. I just thought that was great stuff. That first happened. I remember walking through the queue and reading about it ahead of time. And like we just stand there and watch, right? Wait for those eyes to open, kind of look
Yeah.
around and close. And people are like, that those eyes just opened. We already knew kind of the trick, but it was fun to watch other guests kind of, especially kids, kind of freak out when they saw that. Um, and there were a lot of other things. I just love the look of the Haunted Mansion. I like it much more than the Disneyland version. I know they're going for the new plantation look. Um,
Hmm.
and I kind of wish they would have made the Disneyland version a little more run down like the Imagineers wanted to. But Walt was kind of like, everything has to be, pretty at Disney World or Disneyland. Uh, and that was his call. It was his park, right? Yeah, I just love the look of our Haunted Mansion at Walt Disney World. I just think it's over the top cool, the exterior. If you ever go there on Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, they're kicking out the fog around it and the ghost, the lady ghost, I don't know her name, is out there telling ghost stories out in the front. It's a real cool vibe. So yeah, those are some of the things, and I love a lot of things that I love just about everything about the Haunted Mansion inside, but those are definitely my couple of my favorite things that I really think are well done.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely some things that are well done. And it's funny, the Leota Tomb's headstone that you're talking about, it was added in 2002, which is like prime when we were going. So like 299 to 2003 was like we were going all the time, almost every other weekend. And so I do remember the change and kind of being like, ooh, we're in on the secret and people are noticing and like even as kids being like, oh, look, they're looking at for the eyeballs or they saw the eyeballs. But sometimes you waited a good minute there and so you would see the change once at least while you're kind of standing there waiting to go inside the mansion. So I agree with that for sure. I personally really love the ballroom scene as well. I think we talked about this on another episode about getting stuck on this attraction and that this scene would be the scene I would want to sit in front of. There's just so much going on, so much to look at. Even riding it over 100 times, I'm sure there's things I have not noticed. And the graveyard is great too, especially for the Grim Grinning Ghost song. As a kid, I always loved seeing the spook dog and waiting for those, at the time, terrifying pop-ups to sneak up on me. Speaking of the pop-ups, I think the attic area is an area that I was very terrified of as a kid because there used to be a lot more pop-ups than there are today. Now they kind of have those all changed out to the portraits where the husband's heads go missing. So it's creepy to me, but not as creepy as the like unexpectedness of the pop-up. So I remember as a kid like kind of closing my eyes at that part. I was never really scared of the ride. I think Regan was maybe a little more scared of it than I was, but we always went on it. And this is a ride too that even my kids, they're like, "Oh, the silly, silly ghost ride." Like they don't think it's like super scary or spooky, but I know some kids it really freaks them out. I do remember those pop-ups pretty vividly. And same thing in the graveyard, kind of waiting and now knowing where they are. But yeah, the graveyard too, there is just so much to look at. I love the mummy in the graveyard. That's one of my favorite kind of animatronic characters that they have, and the people having the little like tea party type thing. There's just so much going on. But the bus definitely take the cake. The singing bus are awesome. So I agree. There's so much to look at. As far as the exterior, it's funny. We grew up obviously going to this. I had never been to Disneyland until I was an adult. And I was like, oh my gosh, Disneyland's is so cool. But I do agree with you. It's not as run down looking as Disney World. So, but to me, it's like fits their land and ours fits our land. So, like Liberty Square, I feel like ours fits really well. Theirs is more, the French Quarter, New Orleans vibe because that's the area that it's in the park. So I think it fits. I like that they're different. I like that they're not exactly the same. And next episode, we'll kind of get into the different ones around the world and how they're all very different from each other. I remember when the first 2003 movie came out, I hadn't been to Disneyland yet. And so when they filmed it in New Orleans and it was this New Orleans mansion looking similar-ish to the one at Disneyland, I was like, what is this? This isn't the Haunted Mansion because it's not at all like the one at Disney World. So feeling like a little bit disappointed by that as a kid because it didn't look the same as what we were used to. But yeah, a great ride. Lots of things to look at in the queue. I love that they changed the queue a little bit to have some interactive elements, which the last few times we've been on it, it hasn't even been busy enough to have that section open. They kind of only open that interactive section when it's really, really busy. But it's nice to see things and seeing all the different tombstones we'll kind of talk through some of that stuff next week too, with some of the hidden and secret things there. But overall, yeah, just so many really cool things about this attraction that are great and really make it hold up over time all these years later. So, Dad, if you had to remove or reimagine one scene entirely, which would it be and why? Which is, I know it's hard because you love it all, but is there any scene that you're like, oh, that could be changed or that could be updated or something, even maybe updated, maybe not even reimagined or removed, but something you feel like could use a little zhuzhing?
I'll go with something I would remove that they did that I find just kind of silly. The steps with the footsteps going up that light up and go up, it just looks kind of elementary, kind of kiddish, kind of like I don't know. I don't know. I know what they're trying to, there's a ghost walking up the stairs or whatever, but they're kind of
Yeah.
just the way it's done. I would just pull that back out and just go back to you're just going up the stair. You're just going up the stairway. There's the banister on the side. Up you go. You're going up into the upper area where the ballroom scene, and then of course the attic. Yeah, I would pull that out and just go back to the original thing. I really wouldn't want to touch a whole lot of other things. I think the enhancements they did in the other areas were really well done. If they went back to the original hitchhiking ghosts that were basically just animatronics that were hitchhiking, right? Instead of the more updated LED version or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that too. But yeah, for me, the stairway and the steps, I would just bring that back to the original and get rid of that.
Personally, the only thing that I mean, the stairway, that's a good choice. The only thing that I wish they would remove, and I'm sure they never would, and I'm sure people are like, but that's part of the story, is the guy hanging in the initial scene. It's just not my favorite thing, and like it's very triggering for me. When we went on di at Disneyland, I was like, ugh, I just like, I don't know. And then the kids are kind of like, what's going on? And I know it's a creepy, he's dead, I get it, but I don't love that. So that's like the one thing that I'm like, I love the whole stretching room. I just wish they could do something different or like they had the sound effect without the dude up there. It just like isn't for me. It's not my cup of tea. But otherwise, yeah, I think the only other section that I think is really lacking is that stairway section. I just wish that it was yeah, different or like you said back to the original way without the like hokey footprints. It kind of looks like you said a little elementary, a little like compared to everything else just like not as cool or updated even though it was an update. So, I agree. Would you rather, our question for this week, this might be a tricky one for some people. This is tough. Would you rather be able to know all the Haunted Mansion lore and secrets or be able to ride the Haunted Mansion whenever you wanted with no wait?
I would go with knowing, I would like to know all the Haunted Mansion lore and secrets. There's probably some that I don't know. I think I know a lot of them just
Mm-hmm.
from reading about it for, for so long. As far as riding on it with no weight, well, we've done that how many times?
Yeah.
The weight, the weight has always been pretty light. Back in the old Fast Pass days, you'd jump on that thing in 5 minutes, right? It was
Yeah.
pretty cool. So for me personally, since I've ridden it so many times, and once in a while, if you walk up to the queue line and says wait time is 30 minutes, we'll go do it another time.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is when you go so much, and we've been there a lot. So yeah, I would like to know if there's more lore and secrets that I don't already know. That would be great. I like to know that.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I would pick too. And I think, like you said, we've also just been spoiled and gone on this so many times. It is interesting. The fast pass merge point for this is kind of like right when you walk up to go into the mansion, to go into the stretching room, which is really nice because this is another attraction that after that point, you're still waiting a little bit, but it's not long. So it's like they kind of make it into more of like, once you get inside, the attraction begins. It's not really like once you sit down on the Omnimover, it kind of starts earlier than that. And like we talked about a few episodes ago, even back in the day when it was really busy, this hasn't happened to me in a while, but they bring you in the mansion and you stand there and kind of watch the portrait of the man change from like a regular man to a skeleton. And now the last few times we've been on it, and it's been busy, I think they really don't even have you stand in there. They have you go right into the stretching room. They like open the doors, the stretching room opens, and you like filter right in. So I don't know why they changed that or if it's just been weird timing. Has it been like that the last time you went, Dad? Do you remember?
Yes, and I always like to wait and see the portrait change because it changes pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's just that's kind of your pre-show, basically.
Hmm.
And then there are two stretching rooms. Some people don't know that there are two stretching rooms. And another thing about the stretching room, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I start remembering all these things. We always thought we were cute. The cast member would come into the stretch room and tell everybody to get away from the walls, right?
To the dead center.
The dead
Yes.
center of the room, right? So we'd all kind of squeeze in. It's a hot July day and you're smelling everybody, right? It's not pretty in
Oh,
there when you're all squeezing in there.
yeah.
Sorry, maybe too much information, but we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would always look for where is the sliding door to get out into the queue area where they basically take you 10 across and mash you into one line, right? Because you're
Yeah.
just make sure you're holding on to your group's hands because you're gonna gonna lose somebody.
Yeah.
So I always found it interesting. I'd look for the little red dot, the red LED light, and I knew that's after a while I knew right where to stand. So I would stand, move my way over and stand right in front of that. And it's really basically also where the cast member's kind of standing too, because she's kind of there or he's there to kind of, shoo you out of the stretch room at that point. So we'd stand there and we'd be right there when that door opens. We'd be the first out that door and we get, into the line fast. And we
Yeah.
try to figure all this stuff out, which was kind of fun. So, yeah, it's just another little thing I remember that we did all the time too. But, and the stretch room, goes up and it's stretching the portraits up at Walt Disney World. You're not going down an elevator in Disneyland. You're actually going down, stretching the portraits down as you're going down to the bottom floor, so you can basically get underneath the train tracks.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely a difference. And I could kind of tell a little bit, like in Disneyland, I was like, oh, I kind of feel it moving. And like in Disney World, you think, yeah, like you said, you think it's moving, but it's not actually moving. You're staying the same, and the door kind of opens on the other side to let you out. I'm trying to remember on Disneyland if it's like the opposite side of where you enter or where the door is that you go out of. I can't remember now because I've only been on that one twice, but it is a little bit different over there for sure. But yeah, both stretching room scenes, both the rooms are the same, so you're not getting like a different experience in one room or the other than the door opens in a different spot. Like you said, if you're looking for that red light. And that's something, it's funny when you go in, you can kind of tell who knows about that and who doesn't, because some people will kind of scoot to that side of the stretch room, and everybody else is just wandering into the middle as they tell you, like, move to the dead center, move to the dead center. I also feel like the cast members, the last few times we've been, haven't been as like in character, and that could have just been time. Like they're just like move to the dead center, and that was it. Some of them really come around and they like make you move and do different things. And I think in Disneyland, a huge part of that is because you are moving down, but or I don't know, but yeah, they try to get you kind of in the middle of the carpet, but it often is packed and you are like right on top of each other. So that is true for sure.
And
Uh,
another thing I thought of too, a lot of times you see people that have to use a wheelchair for whatever reason, or a cart or something. You don't see them come in, and how are they loading? How are they getting people that are using a wheelchair that need that assistance? Well, there's a place called the servants. I think it's called the servants entrance or something, a doorway, and it says that right on the door, and it's done in kind of a like it's the servants' quarters or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what the sign says. Servants something, but that's the doorway, that hallway where they go down, and they'll load the people that are using some sort of assistance like that as you are exiting. If you can remember, you can see some people loading once in a while as you're exiting the haunted mansion out of the doom buggies. People are loading there too, so
yeah,
they'll
yeah.
load in that area. They don't go through and have to go through the stretch room and then have to try and cram them through the line because that would never work, right? So
No.
that's how they load them there, which I thought was that's pretty creative way to do that too. So people that are using assistance like that for whatever reason, they can still ride the haunted mansion, which I just think is super cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. Yeah, and yeah, talk about trying to cram people into a small space. But it is funny going to Disneyland now. I'm like, oh, all of the rides that are original there, at least, the queues are so small. So small. They like definitely did not think about how large most Americans would be as time
I
moved
agree.
on because oh
Yes.
my gosh, you like wind around some of those dark rides. I'm like, how do people fit in here these days? That's how it feels in Walt Disney World Haunted Mansion. You get off, you're trying to cram into this one little narrow line that comes around. Yeah, it's just amazing how many people they shove into that attraction each day.
And
But
another thing that I thought of, and I'm sorry I'm coming up with all this
no, this is
last minute
good.
things.
Great content.
One thing I remember when you get into the line before you load into the doom buggies, and I always pointed this out to you kids, the stanchions are basically the steel rods that are holding up the chain that divides you as you're walking through, and you go around the one stanchion, and you work your way back toward the doom buggies, and then you get on the doom buggies. The little bats that are on there on the top of those stanchions, there's these little metal bats that they've
Yeah.
put on there that have probably been on there forever. The one right on the end, look at that. The next time you go by, everybody grabs that. Not everybody, but a lot of people grab that and they kind of spin around it. It's worn down
Yeah.
from all the people doing that. I know
Its
it sounds
head is
silly,
like
but it's
half
something I
gone.
just noticed. And I remember someone saying, well, look at this stanchion where the bat is on the top at the very end as you're going around and doing the 180 and you're grabbing it, and it's that bat is all worn down over all these years of people grabbing and walking around. I know it sounds weird, but it's just one of those things I remembered. It's just another weird fun fact.
Well, I remember I was one of those weird kids that always grabbed those bats, and I did this weird thing, especially back in the 2000s, where I had named all of the bats, and I don't remember what I named all of them, but I remember the one you're talking about specifically. This is how you can tell I've been on this ride too many times. I named Tammy, which is funny. My Aunt Tammy. I don't know why. I don't know why that end bat with the worn down head was Tammy, but I would go through and name each bat, and I would go through it every time we'd go on it, and the end one was always Tammy. It was a weird kid thing that I did. I was a weird kid. I'm a weird
That's
person,
the first.
whatever.
As her dad, I've never heard that before. So
Yeah.
it's breaking news.
It was one of those weird things that I did. Some kids have imaginary friends. Some kids named the bats on the Haunted Mansion. I did both. So yeah, just that's funny that you bring that up, just because I do know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm pretty sure it's like a weird thing that I have to touch that bat every time. Which my husband Maddie, who's super OCD, would be like, "Blah, don't touch that nasty thing that everyone's touched." So yeah, that's so funny. Well, cool. Well, that is it for this week. Next week, we're going to kind of jump into the rest of the Haunted Mansion. We're going to kind of get into things like the background story of the ride, special events over the years and behind the scenes tours that they've had at the Haunted Mansion, some fun things to look for, hidden things within the Walt Disney World version of this attraction, as well as the differences at the different parks across the world, the cultural impact and legacy, the Haunted Mansion films, and some personal stories as well. I've got a couple of fun follow-up questions too. So that will all be coming next week. But we hope that you guys enjoyed this and that you learned something about the Haunted Mansion. We know a lot of people, especially on the West Coast, are super familiar with the history of the West Coast attraction, but there are a lot of differences between the two, the one in Disneyland and the one in Disney World. And obviously, the one in Disney World is the one that we are most familiar with. So I think that is it for this week. So we will catch you guys next time.
See you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin' Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into weekly polls and debates. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to follow and hit that 5-star button. If you are over on YouTube, subscribe and leave us a comment as well. If you're listening on Apple, a 5-star rating and a written review would mean the world. You can also now support the show through our Patreon at patreon.com/Soarin'AroundWDW podcast by becoming a free or paid member and finding exclusive content and bonus episodes and videos there too. Thanks again for joining us. Catch you on the next flight.